In this video, I'll walk you through how to connect a publicly available REST API to Knowi, query the data, and then use it to build a dashboard. First, go to Queries, and then select New Data Source. Scroll down until you see the REST API option. First, we'll want to give our data source a name. So for this example, I'm going to be using the Oakland Crime Watch dataset, which is publicly available through the City of Oakland's data portal. The REST host is the base URL of the API you're connecting to. So this is the main endpoint that Knowi will use to send requests. So I'm going to go to the City of Oakland Crime Watch data page. Then I'll go to API. And here I can get the API endpoint. You can select which kind of data format. I'm going to keep it in JSON. SOTA 3 requires authentication, so I'm going to switch to version 2. And then I'm going to copy that endpoint. Next, you'll select the authentication type, which defines how Knowi authenticates when making requests to the API. So your options are basic, OAuth 2.0, and other. And I'm just going to keep it on basic. User ID and password aren't necessary for this REST API since it's publicly available, so I'm going to leave it blank. And then connection parameters are also optional. These allow you to pass additional options that affect how Knowi connects to the API. So you could set different timeout parameters or connect parameters, things like that. Select the SSH tunnel if the REST API is behind a firewall. And then selecting HTTP proxy allows Knowi to route API requests through a proxy server. I'm going to test the connection here, and we see that it's successful, so I'm going to go ahead and save. And now we can start building our query. So our data source is the Oakland Crime REST API, which is what we just set up. We could define a new endpoint, but if we leave it blank, it'll just default to the data source URL. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it blank since we've already made that connection. If you want to make a POST request instead of a GET request, you'd check this box. Headers are optional. You'd enter each header on its own line. What you put here depends on the REST API you're connecting to. So always check the API documentation to see what's required or recommended for your connection. URL parameters let you pass values to the REST API as part of the request URL. So these are often used for filtering, limiting, or sorting your data. I'm going to go ahead and limit our query to data after 2025 or starting at 2025 and beyond. So where So I'm basically just getting all data that starts on January 1st of 2025 to present. If you have additional transformations, you can use Cloud9QL, which is essentially Knowi's in-house SQL. These options here are for REST APIs that return data in pages instead of all at once. So if that's the case, you can fill in these fields. We can leave them blank for this connection since it's pretty straightforward. And then if you check ignore HTTP errors, Knowi continues processing even if the API returns errors. And retry on errors means that Knowi will retry up to 3 times to make that connection if it's failing. So we'll go ahead and preview this query. So one thing I notice in our preview data is that location is a nested field. So I'm going to go back up to Cloud9 transformations and just expand that field. And we'll check that again. And now we see that that location field has been expanded, and now we've got the coordinates for each row of data. Under data strategy, we can specify if we want to run this query once, or if we want to run a direct query, which means that every time we open up a dashboard or a widget tied to this data set, it will re-pull the data. Or we could set up our query to run on a scheduled interval, and you could customize it to run however often you need it to. Under settings, we'll give our data set a name. And then we'll create and run this query. In our data overview page, we can see that we've got our query, we've built a data set from that query, and we've got our first widget or visualization. From this one query and data set, we can build out as many dashboards and widgets as we need. So now we're ready to build out a dashboard. It's easy to build dashboards in Knowi with the help of AI. So I can ask any questions of my data, and Knowi's in-house AI model will search, analyze, and filter our data accordingly. So I just want to know what the total number of crimes monthly were. And now I'll generate a dashboard to get that information. So the dashboard that's generated has a default widget with our full raw data set on it. And then we've got another default widget with our AI recommendations. So this will essentially analyze the data set for us and generate this list of insights and associated recommended action items for each insight. And then we've got one widget here with the question that I've asked of total monthly crimes. So we can go into any of these widgets. And I think I also want to see where crimes are occurring. So I'm going to go over to the visualization tab. And since we've got coordinate data, I can just go down to the geo-cluster option here. We've got a bunch of different geospatial options, but I'm going to select geo-clusters. And now we've got a map of where these crimes are taking place. So I'm going to save that. And this is interactive, so I can click into each of these and see what kind of crimes happens in each area. If you think of more questions that you want to ask of your data, you could always update your instructions in the AI dashboard, or you could use the search bar at the top here to just ask questions in plain English. So maybe I want to know the total number of crimes by description. So it's sorted the total crimes by counting them and then grouping by the description here. And I can go into visualization and again change how this data is visualized. So we've got that AI recommendations option here, which was that default widget generated. But I'm just going to stick with a column chart. So maybe I'll limit some of this data so that we can see the top 10 most prevalent crimes. All right, so now I can save that. And now I'll add that to our dashboard. And you can rearrange these widgets and drag and drop them around to make your dashboard look the way you want. For any widget, you can go into the alerts and set up alerts to be sent out based on thresholds that you define or anomaly detections. And these alerts can be integrated via email, Slack, or Teams. You can also set up dashboard level filters. And you can generate insights based on each widget. So these will include things like anomalies, comparisons, growth rates, prediction values, and data summaries. These instance sites can also be added as a widget to your dashboard. It was one of the visualization options. To send your report, you could send it as a PDF attachment. And again, this report can be integrated with email, Slack, or Teams. And you could have this report be sent out on a schedule, or you could just send it out once. You could have AI-generated recommendations inserted into your report. So in the body of your message, you would just add the token, embed recommendations. That's how easy it is to go from a REST API connection in Knowi, query your data, and then turn it into an interactive dashboard and ask questions of your data.